Hey everyone, it's Mackenzie here, and today we're having an interview with Brian. Welcome, Brian. How are you?
I'm good, Mackenzie. How are you doing? So nice to see you.
Likewise, very nice to see you. I love your background.
Thank you.
Just got secured the penthouse yesterday.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's my lockdown. It's where yeah, secured here now.
Not such a bad lockdown there.
Yeah, it is not. Yeah, it's not.
Awesome. I'm glad
Can't
to hear
complain.
you're really well. So just so everyone is aware, Brian has recently started in the last few weeks at PWC as a financial advisory associate. And for some context, Brian joined the grad jobs program a little bit late into last year, so right at the end of last year. And he was kind of, I think, either finishing or had finished his master's at UNSW in professional accounting. So an awesome university there. And from memory, when Brian joined, his dream was to work at Big Four. And one of his dream companies was PWC. So he did end up making that happen. And now, he's there. He's enjoying the life. He's enjoying the training. So firstly, well, again, thank you, Brian, for taking the time. This means
No,
a
of
lot.
course. Yeah, no. Happy to do it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And so what we're going to do in this interview is we're going to just dig into Brian's story. Simple as that. That's the whole purpose of this. We're going to ask him about kind of why he decided to pursue the masters and how he was able to kind of land these jobs and what it was like, etc. So without further ado, let's begin.
Yeah.
So take us back to before you started at UNSW. So you decided to pursue a master's
Yeah.
of professional accounting, one of the
Right.
top universities in the world,
Yeah.
and do that as an international student. So
Yeah.
what was this process behind that?
So I guess one of the main reasons that I wanted to study accounting was that I've always been like accounting has always been that subject that I've always related to very closely. Like it's come pretty easy to me usually. And I think right out of college, I've always wanted to work in accounting. So I was working in Tata Consultancy Services. So it wasn't exactly in accounting, but there were some like auditing aspects in the job that I was working at. So I worked there for about 2 years, and I feel like I got a good bit of exposure working with managers and other associates, and just getting a hands-on idea for like how corporates work, big corporates work, and how like just like simple stuff like how reporting works and how auditing works and stuff like that. But I felt like at some point I wanted to like just move overseas and just get the exposure to just how business works overseas. And I was looking at a couple of different countries, and I just settled on Australia. I think the main reason I ended up settling on Australia was because of how similar the education pattern was. Like other countries kind of tend to have just the length of their bachelors and stuff like that is a little bit different. So
Mm.
it is hard to relate your education to theirs, whereas Australia kind of seemed streamlined to how I was studying in India. And then when I came across UNSW, it was just so different because there's such great universities in Australia. So I felt like UNSW was kind of the right place to be. So it was always a toss up between UCED and UNSW, as I guess most students have, because they're one of like the few top universities in Australia.
Mm.
But yeah, I guess I settled on UNSW because I think their accounting programs are really good, and obviously you get to meet a lot of professional experts in professors and different students who come from different backgrounds, and just like I've met such amazing people and people from like different walks of life and things that they're doing, and they've all come to do different. They all have different goals, they think different experiences. So yeah, that was the main reason I came to UNSW, and I can't say I'm disappointed.
Amazing. It sounds like it's been an incredible experience.
It has definitely has, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. And so just going back a couple of steps. So you actually started off as an auditor at Tata Consultancy Services.
Yeah.
That's already a pretty cool gig.
Yeah,
What?
it wasn't bad. Yeah, it was pretty fun. So uh that was right out of college. I think that one I actually didn't have to put a lot of effort into. Like it's just so when I was in college, they told us that there's this opportunity coming up where Tata Consultancy is looking to hire some associates, and they'll actually be coming in to interview a couple of candidates, or like just basically run through the whole session. So they actually had, just like how big companies have like their final day interview, so they had like an assessment stage, and they had a group interview stage, and then they had a final interview stage. So like a lot of people came into that, and then they started like filtering people out based on the assessments, and it was all happening in college itself. So yeah, so that point I had no intention of working there, honestly. I just went like, it's big, it's a big company, it's exposure to for the experience and just to see how you get. Because at that point I was actually planning a couple of different things in life. I wanted to get out of college and maybe do something else, and then figure out what kind of prospects I had. But I just went there. I thought, oh, I'll just go there because it's a big firm. You always the interview experience never goes to waste. It's always transferable skills. So I went there and it was working through, and then I was just going through the process and kind of understanding what they were doing on that day itself, and it actually started seeming really interesting, and so I started understanding that that kind of experience would never go to waste. And I actually managed to get through. I got to the final stage, and then they were happy to have me. So I actually decided to do it. They would give me the offer, and then after a couple of months, I started working there. And again, I had an amazing time there. I think that experience was also very. It was one of the big factors why I'm at PWC now, because there was a lot from that experience that I could share and talk about. Whereas I feel like if I just decided to study more or maybe just move to Australia directly, I wouldn't have anything that like my next employer could relate to. So I feel like that it was definitely one of the good decisions that I made. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. And I remember when we met for the first time as well, that was impressive to me.
Yeah.
And some
Remember,
people, I think there's a bit of a misconception, a little bit of a misconception. People often think that, or international students that I work with, that the international experience isn't really as valuable.
yeah, I know what you
And
mean. Yeah.
in some cases, they, maybe that is what is perceived by the market. But
Mhm.
what I'm seeing is that when people actually kind of honor that experience and they, just treat it at face value, and they don't say, oh,
Hmm.
this wasn't as good an experience. They don't kind of label it as that, and they label it as a experience they're proud of. It is just as valuable.
Yeah.
I'd really like if people did that more. The same with part-time jobs. It's so funny the number of people I meet. They have part-time jobs they've been doing for years. One person I worked with, he was working as a pizza maker
Yeah.
for a long time, and he didn't want to put it on his resume.
Oh.
And I only found out after kind of analyzing and talking to him. And he was like, oh, well, it's not a professional experience, so I didn't want to embarrass myself. And I was like, no, that's really cool. Keep that on your
Yeah.
resume. And now the
Yeah.
first line of his resume's got that in it. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, that's really cool. And I was really impressed by that. So brilliant. It seems you worked hard for it though. It wasn't easy to get into Tata.
Yeah. Like it was definitely like the day itself was, because there was obviously a lot of people that were enthusiastic. Like for a lot of people, they were genuinely interested. So like it was a lot of people there, and it just kept getting filtered out.
Yeah.
And I remember like I had this my best friend back then in college. We both just went for it, and honestly, both went for it for the experience. But I guess we both ended up working there anyway.
Oh,
But
really?
yeah, but we definitely had a great time. But like I think we both got through, and then yeah, it was really fun, like just going through all the stages. And because that was, I think, my first real experience of how big corporates work and how they hire, and like what the process is like. So it was quite interesting. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And so you had a couple years at Tata
Yeah.
as an auditor. Seems like you did quite a lot of good work there based on
Yeah.
what you've told me and what's in your resume, etc.
Yeah.
Actually, in fact, why don't we just jump into it for a sec?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what did you actually do as an auditor?
Yeah. So
And
I'll
what were
tell
your
you how.
achievements? Sorry.
Yeah. So Tata Consultancy was like, I think it was a little bit unexpected on how it played out. Sorry, this is just so because when I joined there just as an associate. So it
Yeah.
was, like I said, it wasn't exactly an accounting job, but it did have some auditing aspects to it. So it was, ideally we were working for a US based company that was working for like trade solicitation. So it was just in US, Canada, and Mexico. They had like trade logistics and stuff like that. So ideally it was a lot of documentation work that we did for them. So a lot of invoicing that came in and that we had to record and keep a track of. So just making sure that all the invoices were in line and then putting them up in the system. So that's where I started. And then the stage up from that was being an auditor. So once you've been in the company for a year or a couple of years, when you've gotten the experience of how everything in the audit works, or how everything in the system works, and then you're aware of what mistakes there can be, then they promote you to being an auditor where you can actually inspect the work that's done by others. And then that also means it gives you a lot of reporting duties, so that you basically prepare reports for how the people are performing, how the project is performing, and just on a daily, like there are some reports that you prepare on a daily basis, some on a weekly basis, and then you kind of got to discuss them with your managers or with your employer or with the other associates, depending on how it was going. So for me, I was really lucky because I think I was one of the very few people, or back when they told me, it was one of the only person who, only in a matter of couple of months, I was actually promoted to auditor because they felt
Mm.
like I was doing really good. And luckily for me, the opportunity presented itself because there was a senior employee who decided to leave and move somewhere. So there was also the need, and at that point, because I seemed like a great fit, they were more than happy to give me that role. So I think that actually was a great exposure because I feel like, because I was only there for 2 years, so in for many people that opportunity might never come if they decided to leave in just 2 years and just do like regular work. But I feel like for me, because it was a great exposure and because I was doing that, I also got into reporting. So before that point, my Excel skills were really basic. But like I have to say a lot of people that were so helpful. Like through the whole journey, they've been very good with like giving me training and giving me guidance. And I think I learned so much Excel. Like there was a lot of reports that we were making, and one of my managers there, he taught me how to automate a lot of reports because there were a few that we were doing a lot of manual work on. So he taught me one, and because I learned those skills, I was actually able to automate a couple of them myself, just because of understanding how the formulas worked and how we could prepare different sheet. And then we could just take down like working hours from like reports that we spend like 3 hours a day on, they took like an hour a day because we literally just had to take data and then hit some macros, and it would just run itself, and it was working well. So I actually did a couple of them myself, and because of those, I kind of also got like an Employee of the Month award over there, like 3 times in a row, just because I was performing well. And then yeah, so
Only got them 3 times in a row.
yeah, no, it's really hard. Like I know it sounds like some people are like, oh, it's just an Employee of the Month award, like, but because like when you're with that many people and everyone's just trying to do their best, because everyone's doing the same work and everyone's doing great, like everyone there is like super competitive and everyone wants to get that award, because it means something. Like it's not just an award, like you get to buy a gift for yourself and stuff like that. You get like points that you can use. So like everyone definitely wants that extra boost, and it's always a motivator for people, and people are doing great things. Like even from, so we had like sub processes on our whole floor. So people in like the other process, I know that there was like somebody who had a certain process that they were working on, it was functioning really good. Like through the years, people had worked on it and brought it to like a 99.5% accuracy. But this specific person, he worked on it for 3 months and he brought it to 99.7%. And what a manager was saying was that getting it to a 99.5 is pretty easy because you can identify the big flaws. But once you've made it pretty airtight, and then adding another layer of perfection on top of that is like, it's really hard to do that. So when you're competing with people like that, I feel like just getting those awards, especially back to back, I think just makes it really special.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
so yeah,
That's
I think,
amazing.
yeah. So I guess that, and then just like the opportunity of just being able to communicate with my managers, also our correspondents overseas in the US, for the actual company that we were working for. So just being in touch with them constantly, because just because there was like they would assign us specific clients that we were handling. So just being in touch with them constantly and trying to understand. And it's always a challenge because there were also some Mexican clients that we had to speak to, like suppliers, and some of them are not huge companies, so some of them didn't even have like English speakers, or some of them never understood what kind of documents you were asking for. So it was always that challenge of trying to figure out how to deal with different kind of customers. So there's definitely a lot that I got to learn. So it was a short span of time, but definitely a lot that I came out with. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing experience,
Yeah.
and great for the resume as well. And like you
Of
said,
course.
great for interviews and
Yeah.
assessment centers and
Yeah.
all those sorts of things. Especially when you're working in a financial advisory, you probably use, or you, if you're not at this stage, you probably will be using Excel a
Yeah,
lot.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so
Yeah.
you were at TCS, you jumped across to UNSW. When you got to UNSW, so that would have been kind of a blank slate almost for you,
Yeah.
starting uni, new place.
Yeah.
So I've got your LinkedIn actually up here. You've
Yeah, of
had
course.
a few interesting jobs,
Yeah.
really interesting ones. So you
Yeah.
were an assistant lecturer at
Yep.
UNSW, which
Yeah.
is pretty cool. Retail assistant at Shoes and Socks for
Yeah.
about a couple of years, and
Yeah.
also towards that end there,
And
kind of
yeah.
just before you joined PWC, you're working at JB HiFi, which is another
Yeah.
awesome brand. So are there any of those experiences that you wanted to touch on specifically, or should we just go through all of them and just talk about, why you joined, how
Yeah.
you joined, how it was, etc.? Would that be easier? What would you like
Yeah,
to pick and choose?
I think I'll just go through them chronologically and then kind of
Yeah.
just try to pick in, like, just let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
I guess the main reason was that when I came to UNSW, like you said, it was a blank slate because I'd been out of college for 2 years. I was working, so I hadn't been back. So it's definitely fun to be back and be a student again. So, and I was looking forward to just a lot of opportunities because I feel like compared to India, there's a lot more that you can do at university apart from just studying because there's a lot of societies that you can be a part of. So that was one of my main goals when I started. I was like, I definitely want to be doing a lot more than just studying. So from day one itself, I tried to find out what societies were there, and I joined the Graduate Student Association. So I kind of interviewed from there from the get-go, and I was very like, I don't know how you say it, but uh, a little bit cocky at that time. So I just came in, I straight up went for like the manager role. I'm like, you know what, I want to be a manager at this association, and I just interviewed for the role directly. So they were happy to interview me. It went pretty well, but they had other candidates that they were more impressed with, so they said to that. But they still did ask me to join an associate, and I did, like, as a team member there. And then just in a couple of semesters, I became a manager and then a vice president over there. So that was definitely one of the most fun experiences I had. It was something that I was doing at uni apart from just studying. It's always going to be that one thing that I will remember because I was part of that. And I think I made some of the best friends in that place because I met a lot of students, and then we just used to have these really fun events and just organizing fun events and just getting to meet a lot of business school associates and business school department heads. That was fun. And while I was doing that in like the initial stages of university, there was one of these professors that came to one of our inductions, and he was talking about how people that are good at communicating could maybe help people. So he was basically running this program called business communication. So it was for students that were coming from different backgrounds who were not so confident with their public speaking. So he was offering it as for people to come and join, but he also said that if you feel like you don't need this, and if you feel like you're confident at speaking, you could maybe come and help other people. You could be a mentor because it's a very voluntary kind of program, and it's not something that has been around for long. It was like a pilot program that he was trying to start. So it really seemed like an interesting opportunity. So I approached him and I said that, look, I like, obviously I'm not an expert, but I'd love to help in any way I can. He's like, yeah, no, of course, we'll give you like a short training on how you actually train people, and then if you want to, you can do that. So I started doing that, and I was actually working with him for a couple of semesters. So while I was doing that, because he was really happy, for one of his finance courses, he asked me if I wanted to be like a lecturer where, so it wasn't exactly training a lot of students, but it would be just assessing a lot of the some of the assignments that they did, and
Mm.
then offering them feedback on the basis of that. So assessing how they were performing, just grading the assessments, and then so that I think was a very unique experience of trying to understand how professors look at assignments. Because when you're doing them, like, yeah, sure, they give you like a scale of how they're going to mark you, but when you're actually marking the assessments, and then when you have like a load of them in front of you, and then you're looking at each of them, it uh involuntarily, but it becomes like a bias where you're kind of not a bias, like a comparison between all of them, like trying to figure out how they did. So if you watch one video and then you're watching the next one, and if one was really good, then that kind of becomes like the benchmark in your mind of trying to figure out. So it's kind of trying to put that bias out and trying to view each individual video just on the marking aspect. So that kind of breaks down how it
Got to
works
audit
out.
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I think, yeah, that was it was really interesting because it kind of brings out that new kind of analytical skill in you and just trying to understand how it works. So that ran. So it wasn't too long, but it was for a couple of months, and then it was definitely like a fun experience. And working for university is always nice, and so it didn't involve going to uni a lot as well. I could do it from home, so it wasn't too stressful either. But that was fun.
So
And
just to quickly pause there. So
yeah.
you joined the student association. Was this the GSA?
Yeah, GSA, yeah.
GSA. So you joined the GSA and you kind of were promoted there quite
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah.
And then you also built a relationship with someone at the university. And then that relationship
Yeah,
turned into him offering you a
yeah,
job.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Perfect.
Awesome.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I did that, and then I was kind of looking for like just because I'd been there in Australia for a while. I figured I should get a casual job. So I went looking. I had no experience, obviously, in working in a casual role. So I never understood before that how it works here. So I would just sit on my computer and try to apply and just try to see if I could get a role. And then one of my friends told me that, look, you just got to pick up your resumes and just walk into stores and just hand them in, and then be like, just talk to them and get to know them personally, and then that'll just give you a good chance. So the first day I went to like Westfield near me, and I walked into Shoes and Socks. And I still remember this very clearly. I walked into it, my assistant manager was there, and I gave her my resume. And like obviously I had no experience, but she was really happy with the fact that I had like public speaking experience because I'd done a lot of public speaking. And she was like, oh, that's perfect. And then she just asked me, how are you with kids? I'm like, oh, I love working with kids, and it's like amazing. I didn't even know what shoes and socks was back then. I was just looking for a job. But yeah, that was fun. She was like, yeah, because we deal with a lot of kids with a lot of crying babies. I'm like, yeah, I have no problem with that. Like, I can absolutely do it. And she just called me in for a trial shift, and that was my first shift, and that was that. And then since then, it's been 2 years now, and I guess I've had so much fun with those guys. Like, it's I for anyone that's not done a retail job, I feel like that is an experience that everyone should get. Especially if it's a good place. Like, I know some people have bad experiences, but both of mine have been really fun experiences. I've made amazing friends. We all have like group chats that we still talk on. I still talk to them. Like, we're on Instagram, we follow each other, and we always share memes or something. And it's so much fun. We always used to have a lot of fun there. Like, even the managers, they were so relaxed, they were so nice. So like, there was no pressure or anything. It was just a really nice, fun environment. And obviously it's working with kids, so you can never be sad about that. And then just using that experience, when I actually finished uni, and I was still looking for a job, I figured I'll just get a second job because I'm just sitting by and not doing a lot anyways. So I decided to apply to JB HiFi as well. So again, I walked to the store and I was like, hey, I've been working here. I'd love to. And then she just asked me about like how I feel like working with technology, and I was more than happy to tell her. And then again, she was really happy. But so what happened there was I applied quite early in the year, this year, I guess, towards the end of last year, kind of, to JB HiFi. But what happened was that because they'd moved to a new process where every applicant has to go through an online check and through an online application, they can't just hire you directly. So she said, look for formality, just go and apply on our Workday website, and then once it's gone through, just give me a ring, and then we'll sort everything out. So at that point, I was on my bridging visa because I hadn't gotten my graduate visa yet.
Mm.
So I did my application, but it got held up in the background check because I hadn't got my graduate visa, and because of the whole COVID situation, that kind of delayed all the visa processing times. So in a way, it was good because I didn't have a full-time job, so the processing time was a benefit in that way. But like, because of that, JBF got held up. But then after a couple of months, it started. So it was only for like 3 or 4 months now. But I think, again, that was one of the best experiences I had, because I think the store where I work in, JB HiFi, it's a much smaller store compared to the other ones where it's like a huge, so they don't have a lot of accessories here. But that also means that you know everybody that works in the store. So it was like both the places that I worked, they were kind of like, they call you like a your second family kind of thing, where you know everyone that's there, everybody that comes on a shift, you know. Whereas in bigger stores, you kind of don't know. There's just people, like loads of people in the rosters, and you could be working with anyone. Here you kind of knew who you were working with, and I feel like I just made great friends wherever I worked. And I think I had the best of times. Like, and it's always fun being on the other side, witnessing like how, like, you know, you always see that some customers are rude, or some customers are funny, or like some customers are obviously amazing. But it's just getting to witness the other side and just being the receiving end. It was always fun. And then understanding the kind of questions that customers bring you, and kind of
Yeah.
trying to understand. But also, I think it was one of those places where I got like my first exposure to being around like proper everyday Australian people, and like just understanding their life, like day-to-day thing. Because, you know, obviously when they come in with their kids, they want their kid to be comfortable, so they're always talking about what their kid does, and then how they go through stuff. And then you also want to make conversations because you want to make sure that they're comfortable with you taking care of their kid, and then making sure that they're okay. So that, I think, was a really good experience of getting to understand, like, just because obviously it's a cultural difference for when you move to a new country, to understand how people think and what they're looking for.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
That sounds amazing. So it sounds like your part-time jobs were a massive factor
Yeah.
in not only the development of your skills, but
Yeah.
in terms of your kind of your well-being. It seems like it really served you well, and also
Yeah.
taught you a lot, and it helped you to definitely get into PWC as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And so just to summarize there, so shoes and socks, you got into that company through walking in, handing in your resume. They
Yeah.
were impressed by your public speaking experience and
You-
basically just signed you
That's
up.
it. Yeah.
And
Basically.
JB HiFi, so you walked in there, but then you had to apply online as well?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I walked in there. She did like a quick interview. She asked me a couple of questions, and like why I was interested in stuff like that, and what I've
Mm.
done, and like how comfortable I am with specific technologies. And then basically I just told her my experience with tech so far. So yeah, she was definitely happy to have me. But like she said, there was like a manual process that we had to go through applying online. So she asked me to put my application in, and then yeah, so I went through there. Yep.
Awesome. So both of these were kind of like you gave in your resume, but you also built that relationship with the store
Yeah.
manager on the
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah.
And then that kind of secured it for you.
Yeah.
And
It
out
did.
of interest, did you have to go to many retail stores to get that result? So you got 2 offers at retail stores.
Yeah. Oh,
How many
definitely. Yeah.
did you have to go into to get those 2 offers?
So I I don't remember how. So I remember, like, I'll tell you the first time that I did this. So second time when I went, I knew that my aim was to get into JB HiFi. So that was like the first store that I walked into, and because like the manager was very happy, I didn't go through a lot. I still did go, because obviously you don't put all your chips into one, like, say in one block. But I
Mm.
did go to other places. But the first time that I went around, I remember I printed like 50 resumes, and literally every store, I just started from like the start of the shopping center, and every store I could see myself working in, I walked in. I was like, "Hey, this is my resume. If you're hiring," because it was also towards the end of the year, in 2019, so which also
Mm.
meant a lot of stores were hiring their Christmas casuals. So I was like, "Hey, are you hiring Christmas casuals?" And here's my resume, and I basically walked into almost every store, and I think I got called back from 3 or 4 stores, but by like this one, literally they were happy to just give me a trial shift directly, and just start off. So it just worked out perfectly. Yeah. So
Awesome.
yeah, definitely went through a lot of stores before getting that first one. Yeah.
So say about 4% of
Yeah.
those 4%,
Yeah.
or sorry, the first time, 1 out of 50, or 3 or 4 out of 50, you got
Yeah.
the next round kind of opportunity. So
Yeah.
maybe 8, 6,
8%. Yeah.
8%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. Because I think
Yeah.
sometimes people underestimate, in some cases, how much work you need to do to get something fast.
Yeah.
And that demonstrates that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. So now I'm jumping into the next stage. So you've graduated, you've got these awesome
Yeah.
part-time jobs, but
Yeah.
you're looking for that next step, that kind of
Mhm.
dream job
Yeah.
using that degree. And I've got a couple of notes here from previously, and I know you had a couple of different approaches that you used. So one of them was obviously applying online to places like the Big Four, etc.,
Yeah.
but also trying to create these opportunities. And I think your success, in fact, why don't we just go through it now
Yeah.
before I describe it?
Yeah.
How did you land the job at PwC? Was that applying online, or was that through the hidden means?
So it was a bit of both. So I guess I'll go to that. So I guess this is kind of where you come in, because I'll tell you how it went. So when I just finished, I had applied for a couple of grad programs. So when I applied for that grad program versus this one, it was like I can say it was a huge difference on how those two applications look. And I guess the main thing was because I knew the skills that I had, but I didn't know how to present them, and that was the biggest challenge that I was facing. So it was constantly about me applying for jobs. Like literally, my interview calls were honestly 5 minutes. Like they would call me and they'd be like, "Hey, tell me about yourself," and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, hey, I graduated from UNSW. I've done a master's, and yeah, I from India. I worked in Tata Consulting Services. I'm looking for an accounting job. Blah blah blah." That's it. Like it was no description, nothing, and that was my interview. If they would ask me, "Are you comfortable working with Excel?" I'd be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I've done a little bit of Excel at my time at Army." So there was no selling points in there, and I guess that was one of my biggest shortfall. My resume needed a lot of work. Just I guess a lot of those techniques that were kind of falling short on how you answer questions and how you tackle different situations was missing. So I think I'd applied for Deloitte or some grad program back then, and I didn't even get to the first stage because I remember putting that application in thinking that I'm definitely not going to get this. It was just on there, so I put it on there. And I guess after that, when we started working together, it was just those constant like I think it was a lot of practice for sure. I guess it kind of all built up to getting to PwC. Like if I tell someone how I got there and I just explain the application process, like some people like, oh, you like some people do say this, like you got lucky, because obviously it's a huge number. Like from what they told us, I guess 18,000 people applied and only like 100 and something make it. So it's like a 1% or like something like that kind of number that make it actually to the end. So when you think of that, like obviously there is some luck factor there, but people that say that you got lucky, that they don't know how much work actually went into it before you get to the actual application stage. So I guess it was so much practice and just applying to different jobs and constantly working on those was the main thing. So with PwC, how it went was I was actually reaching out to like a lot of executives at different companies, trying to just get that idea of what they're looking for in a candidate and what kind of separates a candidate from the others. And the one that I reached out to at PwC, he was like an executive at a managing partner level, so like a really big guy. I did not expect for him to get back to me, but I have to give, like, his executive assistant was the best person I came across. So she was such a nice person. She got my email and she was like, "Hey, look, he's on leave right now, so he can't get back to you now, but he'll be back in a month, and I can schedule an interview with him when he's back, so you can talk to him then." And she was like, "What is this about? Like, is this about just a job or something?" I was like, I actually am just trying to understand, how PwC functions and what they're looking for in a candidate, especially with the new. So she kind of just asked me like, what kind of experience you have? Is it like, are you just out of college, like out of university? And she said, if you are, then I think the best person to talk to would be like a grad who started now, because they might give you a better idea of what has happened. So I didn't think a lot about it. I was like, yeah, sure, I don't mind. And she connected me with a grad who was also super helpful. So actually gave me a lot of advice, and both of them actually like advised me. They were like, look, our grad program is open now, and I think you should apply for it. Like, just go for it and apply, put your application in and see how you go. And so yeah, so she told me that even the other grad that I spoke to, she told me the same thing. And she actually gave me a little bit of tips about how to go about with the grad program, and just kind of like how it works and what it entails. And
Mm.
so it was, I think, the last 3 days of the application process that I was like, you know what, I'll just apply for this program and see how it goes. And I put my application in, and it closed in the next 3 days. So I filled out the whole application. I sat down in one night, filled out all the answers, and I put it through. And it just went through, because I feel like, because of all the practice we've done till that point on how to tackle, no matter what the question was, we have a techniques of, you go through the 4 points and then you just answer those questions of like, just prepare a situation, what the action was and how it helped and what you learned, stuff like that. And I guess that kind of just built up the whole scenario of my application, on how I went through every answer and how I tackled everything. And so it worked out. My application went through. They sent me, they asked me to do the online interview. So again, I used the same things, like 2 questions. I answered the online interview with that as well. That worked. Then they sent me an online assessment, that went through as well. And then I got to, like, after a couple of, like a few of these things, I got to the final stage there, where it's the final assessment day. So that was the group discussion and the interview stage.
Mm.
And again, so the group discussion, I remember we had a talk just before we started. So this is where I think it was kind of that one of those luck thing that actually happened, was that they'd given us like a slight idea of what we were talking about in the group discussion. And so when I'd called up this managing partner to talk to him, and he was not there, ironically, or like luckily, when he came back, it was literally a couple of days before my group discussion, so like before my assessment day. And because I'd done all of this, like talking to the EA and talking to the grad, I didn't think that I was gonna still going to be talking to him. It was in my calendar, but I assumed that because I'd already gotten all of this help, that like he should probably cancel that interview. And I remember I was sitting on my desk and I was preparing for the group discussion, and I get a call at like 5:30. I remember dot five on 5:30, a random number, and I answer like, "Hello." He's like, and he was like, "Is this Brian?" And like he said something PwC, and he said Brad or something, and I was like, "Yeah, hi, what's up?" And I assumed it was someone from the team for the group discussion because, and he said, yeah, he was like, oh yeah. So I was like, and then he was a little bit lost. I was lost too. I was like, is this about the group discussion? He's like, he's like, wait. I was like, didn't you line up? I'm like, oh wait, is this like Matt? It's like, oh yeah. And then he kind of like, so I told him that, oh, I was not expecting this because this happened. He was like, oh no. So my EA told me that, look, there's this guy and he's been really nice and he's been really sweet, and I feel like he could actually benefit from talking to you. So if you could just like give him a call, quick call. So he was like, yeah, I was happy to. And he was so nice. Like I remember talking to him, and he just told me a little bit about himself, and about, like, I asked him a lot more, and he was like discussing with me about my university, and he was talking about his son, because he's in university in Canada now. So he was talking about that as well, and then just like how that has been. And then he was very happy that I'd gotten this far, and he was hoping for the best. And he also kind of gave me a little bit of advice on how PwC's future looks like, and how to just tackle these situations and what they're looking for, and what makes a candidate stand out. So obviously I like made notes of everything that he said, because that advice never goes to the waste. and then come group discussion day, everything that you said, everything that he said, and then I kind of just put it together on how to tackle the situation. So if like that, I think was one of the best things. I was so nervous when I went into it because I didn't even expect to get that far. And obviously when it's online, it's just a worse situation because literally our assessors would turn their camera off. They were still in the room, but their cameras were off and we were just talking. So we had nothing to play off of. We didn't know what they were thinking. It was just the other candidates. And I think with group discussions, it's always that challenge of balancing um, like not being too overpowering, but also kind of not losing charge and not like sitting back and taking a back, like, being on the back burner. So it was kind of trying to figure out that balance and also making sure that the discussion is going in the right angle. Because I think one of the more important things that you told me was that the outcome of the discussion is not as important as the actual discussion itself. And I think that was very important as a differentiating factor that I saw between me, myself, and the other candidates, because a lot of them were focused on, oh, it's a finance company, so we've got to think of it from the financial aspect and what we can do from a financial. Whereas that is not actually what was the whole idea of the group discussion. What they were looking for is how you work as a team and like just how you float that idea. The outcome is, they told us like a couple times that the outcome is irrelevant. It doesn't matter what your idea is, doesn't matter what the outcome is, but they won't tell us outright that it's about how you perform in the group. But that's what they were looking for. I think that was very important because a lot of times it seemed like they were getting sidetracked because they were trying to make it more and more complicated, more and more advanced. And like I think at a couple of times I kind of was like, hey guys, I think we need to kind of streamline this because we're kind of just stretching our time and not kind of deciding on an idea. So I think those kind of factors were kind of the differentiating factor. And I guess I remember messaging you after that saying that, look, hey, I don't know how it went, but I just gave it my best. And then yeah, and then they called me in for an interview. And I think the interview definitely went very well. Like he was a really nice guy, the guy that was interviewing me. And obviously like we practiced all the questions on how you answer. And this time my interview was very different from like at the like end of last year, because when he asked me like that first question and tell me about yourself, and that one was like a good 5-minute answer that I had prepared, like from everything from why I wanted to work in this field and what I did in college, what I've done in TCS, everything I've done at UNSW, my retail experience. And I guess that was such a well-rounded answer as opposed to when I was just saying that, oh, hey, I'm from UNSW, and just walking. So I guess, so just walking through that whole journey of like showing your skills and achievements. I guess people are very like, the one thing that I learned was that no one's going to ask you about your achievement. You have to find a way to kind of put them into the scenario. And now that I talk to other candidates who are trying to like do something, I always notice like how they're always shy of telling things. Like the other day I was talking to one of my friends, and like not friends, like it's like a mutual friend, and she's also kind of looking to get into like one of the big firms. And she was asking me like, so she was just talking about herself, and she said that her father works for Dell in like an executive position back home. And so I was like, do you talk about that? She's like, no, I don't talk about that because you don't want to talk about what your father does. Like, it seems like show off. I'm like, it's actually not showing off. It kind of adds a personal touch. So it's not about saying that, oh, hey, look, my father works for Dell or something like that. It's about because you see that he's worked for a big company and he's gone up through the ranks, and you've kind of seen the work that he does and what an impact it makes, because being in a big organization. So that kind of relates to why you want to work for a big organization, and that kind of becomes your driving factor. So it becomes like a personal touch for the interviewer. And she kind of noted down on her phone as like, "Oh, this is what I'm going to talk about." So I feel like things like that people never think about. Like you said, like no one thinks about putting their the pizza guy job on their resume, because it seems like, oh, it's not an important thing. But it is, because I feel like everything just makes you a rounded candidate. And I was one of those people. I felt like, for like, if you don't have Western professional experience, you're not going to make it. Like I never thought, like I remember with us also, I think for the first few months I wouldn't think about applying for a Big Four. Like Big Four was always the dream
Yes,
that
I
was
remember
there.
that.
Yeah, and I was always like, it's too far away. Like after I get experience, I'll think about it. And I was always aiming for like mid-tier firms and trying to get there. And then I remember you told me a couple of times, look, you've got to apply, and because you have that experience from Tata, like a big company will recognize that experience and they'll be able to translate that. And just because of how much opportunities big companies create, I guess it was kind of being able to break through that barrier and kind of identifying that, you can do it. I feel like a lot of people just don't take that plunge because they always think they're there. And the approach also becomes the same. Like I feel like if you approach it thinking that you're not going to get it, then eventually it shows in your application that you're just like you're reaching, whereas you've kind of got to show that you are somebody who can do it. And I feel like now that I'm there, I feel like I am in the right place. I feel like this is definitely where I belong. And I feel like a lot of people can do it, but people just don't take that plunge. And I know I definitely wasn't thinking about it. I know that you had to like push me a couple of times and be like, just go for it, just give it a shot and start. And then that's, I guess, as soon as I started in like, I think I saw results so quick, like I think in a month or so, I think it all worked out. But yeah, so that was definitely a big one for me.
Amazing, amazing. So,
Yeah.
and I know, so just to step back a second,
Yeah.
you did try a while ago, like a year ago, maybe not a year ago, towards the end of your degree, you tried to apply online and didn't get the results you were kind of looking for. And there are a few reasons potentially for that. Yes, it could have been the resume, it could have been the answers, could have been how you're selling yourself, you know, the phone screenings, all those things, not quite taking it to the next level, but also that relationship element. Because then when you switch that focus to, you know what, instead of focusing on just applying, let's focus on talking to people at these top organizations. And I, from memory as well, in fact, I can actually have got some data here. You did actually message some people. I think it wasn't just PWC. You did message that rare. I think when you showed me the name of the person, I think it was like the CFO of PWC, and I was like, oh my gosh. Okay.
I didn't know. I just reached for it. I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go for this, and if it works out, if it doesn't. But because I was going through that, if it doesn't work out, I'll move down the ladder. But I guess I lucked out because it was like the sweetest people I met. Like, they're so helpful. I guess that was I did not like expect it to go that good, but I guess that it was, I don't want to say it was in the stars, but it all just kind of played out really well and how it worked out towards the end. And yeah, definitely that relationship aspect is there. It's sad that we're in lockdown right now, because when we get back to the office, I definitely want to go and meet them in person, and they were really happy because when I got the job, I actually sent them an email saying that, hey, look, it worked out for me. And they actually both replied, like the EA and the partner, and they were like very happy about it. And they said that, hey, look, if you're in the office, just come up and just say hi, and then let's catch up when you're here or something like that. So it was definitely a very good experience, and that relationship it's always going to stay. So yeah.
And just to clarify as well for people, you didn't just do this with PwC as well. From memory, you actually did it for some other companies. So some other really big companies who actually agreed to have chats with you. And you were kind of like, what? How is this guy willing or girl willing to have a chat with me in some of the best companies? And they were just like, yeah, let's have a chat. And you probably could have got results in other companies as well if you wanted to, but it just so happened that PwC, you got through to the partner, happened to be able to leave, and then the EA stepped in, and the EAs, the executive assistants, or the secretaries, they are so often the gatekeepers. And so many times you'll see it when, you know, someone will come into the organization, and then they'll have the interview, and then they'll go out to the EA and they'll say, how were they? Were they good? And they'll go, I don't know. So they're like these secret gatekeepers everywhere. They're everywhere, and they're so important. And if they like you, like you've just witnessed, you know, if she didn't like you, she wasn't too enthusiastic, she could have just ignored the email.
Exactly.
But she took the effort to make sure the partner actually gave you a call, referred you to someone to call you back. So you didn't just do that with PwC, and it could have worked in other places, but that happened to be the place where it kind of all came together. And the funniest thing is, and I keep saying it to people, I was just saying it to people on the call yesterday, it is so weird how people go for all these different opportunities and they get upset because they don't get them for a little while. They're like, oh, I went to this interview and it didn't work. I went to this interview, it didn't work. And they're really upset. And then the opportunity they do end up getting is the best opportunity for them. It's unbelievably weird. I was talking to a client who got an offer just a couple of days ago at his dream boutique management consulting firm. And he'd previously been to final round interviews at places like PwC and EY and other consulting firms, really top firms. And he hadn't quite made it through for some of those. And he was really upset. But then when he got this offer, he was like, man, I'm so happy I didn't get those offers. This was truly a good fit. And you're right. It kind of comes in a couple of ways. One, you know, when you're a good fit, it's almost like that mutual agreement, and they can kind of see, you know, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. If you think they're awesome, they probably think you're awesome. But also when it comes to your enthusiasm, in the interview, it comes
Yeah.
across much more genuinely. When you're preparing, you probably prepare harder. So it's all these
Yeah.
other variables that come in. And
Mm.
the same thing kind of, happened with you at PwC. And I do distinctly remember you were applying to these very small kind of accounting firms in the middle of nowhere and weren't hearing back for a little while. But then you messaged the CFO or whatever,
Yeah.
PwC, and boom.
Yeah.
So many good tips to take away from that. And yeah, you put in a lot of work.
Yeah.
Although you got the offer from PwC, you must have applied to lots of jobs, sent out lots of
Oh,
messages.
yeah, for sure. I guess so. The emails that we send out, I guess it's such a like the kind of email that we send out is such a differentiating factor from what you just regularly send. So it's about because a lot of people are always, whenever they message someone, they're always desperately looking for a job. And if that shows, then people are very not like they're disinterested in talking to you for that reason. But when you're genuinely curious about just trying to find out about the company and what makes you stand out candidate and just the kind of so and you like it's just about also generating that curiosity with this like, oh, I just have a couple of questions for you. So they're always wanting to know what this is about because it doesn't exactly tell them what you're looking for, but it just tells them what you are and why they, and then you also, and it makes it very personal because you talk a little bit about themselves, so it kind of feels like, oh, this person knows me. It's not just a generic email that he's just shooting out to be like, hey, just give me a job, something like that. So it's always that kind of wanting to build a relationship, and I think that is what it was. So like you said, I did talk to a lot of people. This was obviously not the first one that I spoke to. We've been doing this for a couple of months, and also like you said, for the other person, I remember there was one of this recruitment company that I got to the very end,
Yes.
and like I thought I had the job because they like asked for my references. They got my previous manager at Shoes and Socks and my manager in India to fill out like a whole form, and which is something that they do when they're giving you a job. And then that was it. There was like nothing. There was absolute radio silence. I didn't hear from them. They were not answering my calls or whatever. So it was kind of very disheartening experience at that point because I felt like it was perfect. But then because like I feel like now looking back, I'm so happy that it didn't work out because I felt like if it did, I would have never applied for this and never been where I am right now.
And
So
yeah.
yeah, so I guess that, and then like you said, because I've talked to so many people, like that, it's not one person. It's like same like the retail thing where you have to make that effort of talking to a lot of people because you just need to find that one right person who will help you. And like I did find that one right person who was happy to give me the advice. So yeah, it was at the end of the day I had to go through a lot of application process, but just once you reach out to that many people, you do build connections, and then people know other people. People know what's going on in the industry, and when you have the connections, you are talking to people, eventually something will turn up. And I guess it just works out, but it definitely building a relationship is one of those key things. So like I've always heard through uni that build connections, build references, because it's very important in Australia. You need to have connections, but I never understood how it worked till I started doing this. So yeah, that was definitely one of the big things.
Amazing. I think that's going to help a lot of people, that
Yeah.
discussion there. And so I know it's been a long call, so
No, of course.
I'll just kind of jump to the end.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you've talked a lot about what you achieved, how you were able to get your part-time jobs, your society jobs,
Yeah.
assistant lecturer jobs,
Yeah.
and then get this opportunity at PwC, which is a very unique, kind of pathway
Yeah.
to the offer, which is amazing. And how you could have also applied that to other things as well. And you did, and probably could have got offers from other places, but this was the one that just worked out really well.
Yeah.
And so that just takes me to the question, what propelled you to join grad jobs and join this program, if you don't
Yeah.
mind me asking?
No, of course. I guess so. Like I said, so when I was talking about the initial application, I kind of started to see where I was falling short. Like it was not just about the experience. Like I'll say this. So a lot of people actually say that, oh, just try to get any kind of experience that you can. Or there's a lot of something that I came across when I was applying for jobs is people would say that, oh, we're happy to offer you internship, and then you pay for the internship. And I was like, that sounds a bit strange where you pay like, so they're like, yeah, sure. They'll be like, yeah, we'll give you a certificate that you worked here, you get trained for 3 months in like professional accounting software or whatever, and then you pay us for that. So a lot of people do go down that route, and they feel like if it works for them, like I'm not criticizing anybody, but I feel like nobody actually works on their actual professional skills and what makes them stand out. Because I realized now that even applying for a company like a Big Four, they didn't ask me any technical questions. They didn't ask me anything about accounting, because for most jobs they teach you the the job side of things on the actual job. It's just about who you are as a candidate that makes you stand like a standout. And I guess that kind of is kind of what appeal to me. I actually don't know how we connected. This is the strange thing, but you were on
Mm,
my LinkedIn, and I
yeah.
was looking through my LinkedIn contacts, and I came across yours, and I was reading through the whole bio, and what was in there kind of just sold to me, because it was not about like, oh, come to us, we guarantee you a job, or like come to us and we give you experience or something like that. It was not one of those. It was just about developing yourself and then just getting yourself to that position of making you capable of, and trying to understand of how the industry works, and just those few tricks and like how to crack into the industry of building contacts and building the relationship. And then I watched your whole introduction video that was on your website of, if you're a new joiner, what the difference is and what it actually requires. And I guess that is kind of what propelled me to do this. Is like I realized that there was this was the factor that was falling short in mine, is about having that experience but not being able to present it, and not being able to reach out to many different people, not being able to understand how the job industry works, because I was just going on Seek and applying and hoping that people call back, which is, as we all know, it's not very often that happens, no matter like who you are. So I guess that was the main factor. And I guess as since it started, I've always seen it like being one of the best decisions I made, because I know that if it was not for grad jobs, I definitely wouldn't have got into PwC, because I would probably still be doing the same things I was doing before and still keep hoping. Maybe just reach out to random people on LinkedIn, just saying, "Do you have any opportunities?" That is the question I would use, which I have not used ever since we started working together at all. Like that word has not been there. It's just about building relationships and just understanding how important it is to build relationships. And I feel like even professionally, it just made such a big difference, because I've noticed how I've gone through my interviews, how I've gone through, like, because it's not one company, like even the other companies that I interviewed for, it's just about seeing what difference it made in how I spoke and how I tackled situations. Like now, no matter what kind of question anyone throws at me, I know how to tackle it, because we've worked through that whole process. And at the same time, like my resume, like I remember when we started, it was such a mess. Like it was like a bunch of stuff that was on there, but none of it made sense to someone who was reading it. So it's just about like making it short and making everything on point. So a lot of these things people don't think about, but that was the main selling factor of that gap that I noticed in myself of not being able to reach out to the industry, and that kind of shortfall in professional skills. So not
Mm.
exactly, but that skills that require you make you an appealing candidate. So that shortfall is kind of where I identified that that is the gap that you were filling, and that seemed perfect. Like that is what I was looking for, not someone without pay and they'd be like, oh, hey, come work for us, or hey, this we guarantee you a job. Because that is not like, obviously I wanted to do the work and apply where I wanted to apply, but I just wanted like a little bit of professional help, and that is exactly what I got. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind.
No
But
problem.
also,
Yeah.
you have to say that you put in a lot of work to get to that point,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's obviously easier for me when someone like you comes along and you've got experience at
Mhm.
Tata, you've got experience at
Yeah.
Shoes and Socks, you've got experience at this society. So uh, I think there is that often that gap between
Yeah.
university and the job, and
Yeah.
to get to, I guess, the level where you can breach that gap, you need to
Yeah.
do a lot of work as well. So, um, kudos to you as well for
Mhm.
putting in all that work, and also for taking the jump.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people who are willing to, jump into a program and, invest time working with someone to change
Yeah. Of course.
what they're doing. And it takes a lot of guts as well. And it says something about you. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate the kind words. It's
No,
very
of course.
helpful.
Yeah.
So, I think you've illustrated as well how the program helped. So it was kind of like all those, basically what it seems like you addressed is the fundamentals of
Mhm.
landing jobs, just those
Yeah.
fundamentals, not applying on Seek and paying for internships, just
Yeah.
what are the fundamentals that lead to getting a good job? How do
Good
you
job.
sell yourself? How do you build
Mhm.
relationships? How do you find good opportunities? How do you
Yeah.
interview well? All
Yeah.
those sorts of basic things.
Yeah.
Would that
I guess
be
I just
correct?
wanted to, yeah, I just wanted to add. So, like you said, like, like some people do have that gap, but it's also about, like, if I had not spoken to these people, like if somebody does have gap, they would never be able to identify what that gap is. Like you can keep assuming what a company wants, but when you actually speak to someone in that company at a certain level, they can tell you what they want, like specifically what they're looking for. And yeah, like you said, like obviously you might, like the candidate might not have the experience now, but at least you know what you're working toward. So if you somebody comes at you in like an earlier stage and like just interested in university, they know what they can tackle before they get to that stage. So if they speak to someone now and they know they want to get into a big four, then they can kind of work towards that point. So yeah, so I guess that is kind of where I got lost at first, because I was kind of hoping that I'll keep working without actually identifying what I need to work on, and then when the time comes in my future, I'll apply to a big four. But it was just about taking that plunge, and I guess, yeah, I guess it is definitely about building relationships and identifying those gaps and how it works. Yeah, but fundamentally, yep, like you said.
Amazing. Okay. I think that wraps it up. So it's been a
Yeah,
long one, but I've really
yeah.
enjoyed it. Just
No,
to top it off,
yeah,
if you had to give some advice to
yeah.
say a student or a graduate, they're looking for that dream job,
Hmm.
what would you say to them now that you are at PWC in your dream
Yeah.
job?
I guess first of all, I think one of the big things is that don't be afraid to ask for help, because I know I was one of those people. And the other thing is genuinely try to assess where you're falling short, because a lot of people don't want to do that. Like if, for example, someone called me tomorrow and be like, hey, do you want to run through how you interview? And because you always get nervous, it's easier to interview with a person that you don't know, but with someone that you know, you don't want to kind of show where you're falling short. It's very hard for you to ask help and show where your flaws are. So I guess it's just about like trying to be aware and trying to understand that, look, there might be something that I need help on, and just going out there and saying that, hey, look, can you help me? And like you, for example, I know that you've done a lot. Like I feel like if I'd spoken to any of my friends that I know, I wouldn't have gotten the kind of advice that I've gotten now, because there's obviously shortcomings that I had. And I was definitely one of those that I didn't want to ask for help or something like that. But when I started working it, I definitely realized how I could develop. And I guess that is something I would tell anyone, that don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. Like people are always there to help. And again, it's about, you have to keep trying. There's always going to be that one person that helps you. So when you reach out to 100, there'll be that one person. So don't get disheartened, and ask for help. I guess those would be the two big advices I would say.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Well, I think that's it for today. Thank you very
perfect.
much for your time, Brian. It
Oh,
is
of
much
course.
appreciated. I hope this was
Yeah.
valuable to everyone who watched it. And yeah, that's it from us. Have a lovely day.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Always nice talking to you.
Likewise. Catch you later, Brian.
See ya.